Hi everyone. It looks like we
Good
have
morning,
about,
sir.
good morning, 15 people. So we'll just give everybody a couple of more minutes and then start the class. Okay. We'll just start at around like 11:48 or 11:49.
Good morning, sir. I just joined today. Can you please share the notes which is shared previously?
Sneha, we are not sharing any notes. I mean, these are contact classes where typically, actually, according to the instructions, we are only supposed to answer questions in case you have any, but then we are going a little bit forward from that and we're just going through the units in the textbook or course book or whatever. So if you have any specific questions, then I can answer. But notes wise, I think yesterday, I think it was Samira who was asking me for notes. I will try and provide those, but you'll have to wait for a few more weeks, like a couple of more weeks until we finish the course.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any WhatsApp group created channel for those notes and all already?
Not for the notes, but I know that there is a WhatsApp channel or WhatsApp group for everybody enrolled in the course. I am not privy to that information yet, but I think there should be one person who actually told about the group yesterday. Let's see if she joins. And if she joins, I'm going to request inside in the class to share the details with you. All right.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, we have about 23 participants. It's a Sunday, so people might be taking a little bit longer to join. So we'll give them one more minute and then we'll start the class. All right. I see the regular people already joined. I'm just waiting for some more people to join. Okay, one request I have is some people have joined with names like iPhone. Can you please change it to your name, your actual name, or NYPC? Can you please change it to your name, just so that we know who has joined instead of your phone name? Swati, just right click on your name in the participants list and then just say rename or something like that. There would be an option to rename yourself. And the next time you join into the next class or something, when you join into Zoom, there would be an option to change your name there. So instead of iPhone, just put in your name. Okay, thank you.
ఇదేంది డాడీ పనిచేస్తుందా? ఈడేం కేటరు చెప్పురా ఉదాడి.
Somebody joined with the name J. Babu. Can you please mute yourself? We are able to hear what you're talking to your family. Thank you. Okay, we have
Sir,
33
good morning.
people. Yeah, good morning, Samira. Go ahead.
Just one small question.
Hmm.
As the exams are scheduled in the month of August, I just have one question. Would there be any faculty such as you or anyone from other subjects to be available at the university in case we want to clarify our doubts after these classes have ended?
I am not sure, but as far as I know, no. These are the contact classes, and then this is the only time we are available. But you might want to check this up with Dr. Madhuri, who is the head of the department for English. So just check with Madhuri, ma'am. Do you have access to her?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
just check with her.
Okay.
I
Thank you so much.
don't think so, because I mean you had offline classes and then online classes, right?
Yes.
I think that's pretty much it. Um, but
Okay.
I might be wrong, so just check with her once.
Okay. I mean, we do, like, I live in the same city, so it would be very easy to go to the university and, clarify any doubts if there are any. So I just wanted to check.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you so much.
sure. Okay, we have about 40 participants, so I think we should just go ahead and get started, and then if people trickle in, they will trickle in. Okay. Quickly check the chat. Somebody has sent some messages. Unfortunately, we are missing literary criticism subject. I would suggest you to get in touch with Madhuri ma'am, and then ask her what's going on. Uh, get that thing settled. Okay. Okay, coming to today's class. Good morning, everyone. This class is for MA English first year students. Just to let you all know, in case somebody else is there here, this is not the class for you. This is for course 2, titled American Literature. I think this is the fourth class. We started the course by talking about the major themes in American literature. Then we moved on to talking about Native American literature and then what are the themes there. Then we moved on to American fiction. Yesterday, we discussed a short story writer, Edgar Allan Poe. And we talked about two 19th century American novelists, Herman Melville and Mark Twain. We talked about Melville's Moby Dick, and we talked about Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And we looked at the themes in those particular novels. Today, what we'll do is we will continue the discussion on American fiction and look at the 20th century and see works of two more great authors, Hemingway and Faulkner. Okay, Ernest Hemingway and then William Faulkner. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. The objectives for this class today are to first talk a little bit about these two authors. We'll talk about who Hemingway was and who Faulkner was. And then we will take one work from each of these authors and look at the story and plot of these works and discuss the themes. Why do we do this? We do this so that we understand what these authors' life or writing style is. And then if their life experiences have impacted their writing style, impacted the way they've worked and everything. Like we saw yesterday with Poe, his life experiences were kind of sort of some critics basically think that his life experiences influenced how he wrote and everything. Can everybody please go on mute unless you want to say something? Thank you. Okay, and then I am not sure if Prasad is in this class, but I was actually thinking about something. I need to mention something from yesterday's class. When we were discussing Poe, Prasad mentioned another writer, Washington Irving. I was wondering at that time why he mentioned Irving, because while Poe and Irving were contemporaries. I wasn't sure why Irving was being mentioned. Prasad, later I realized that maybe you're saying Poe commented on Irving and then he said he's overrated. We were at that time when you made that comment, we were talking about Poe making enemies with his reviews. So I'm sorry, I didn't realize that at that time what you were saying, but I hope that that is what you wanted to convey. And yes, Poe made a lot of enemies because of the way of his scathing reviews of his contemporaries. Okay, let's move on. Hemingway. Hemingway, a great author again. He was born in 1899. He was an American novelist. He also wrote short story collections and was also a journalist in Spanish Civil War. You'll have to remember this little tidbit of information about Hemingway because I will mention this again in a later slide. Okay, he was a journalist, so that kind of sort of influenced his way of writing. He was a journalist in the Spanish Civil War and also the World War. So he won the Nobel Prize in 1954. He wrote about 7 novels, I think, and a few short story collections and nonfiction works also. Now, Hemingway, you kind of sort of notice this with most great authors. They like mentally they are usually eccentric. I won't say they are weird, but then they are eccentric. So Hemingway was suicidal and then he died in 1961 by suicide. If you see, Poe was also a very sad man, and a lot of great authors have, the upstairs is a little icky or like I said, eccentric. Okay, before looking at one of his works, let's see how Hemingway wrote. Just like we looked at how Edgar Allan Poe wrote, what his style was, we'll look at Hemingway now. Now, Hemingway's style was fundamentally shaped by his life experiences, like I was mentioning a little while ago. What does this mean? He had a lot of experiences. He was part, like I said, was part of multiple wars as a journalist. So he has seen death from a very close distance. I'm sorry, somebody was saying something?
Nothing.
Okay, we'll move on. So he was a journalist and he had seen death from a very close distance. So his writing reflected his experiences. What does that mean? He has seen death with such close, he had encounters with death in such close quarters that it impacted the way he wrote. What does that mean? It means in the war, people realized that, institutions like the government or whoever it was, the leaders or whoever, was not able to save its people. Now, people died everywhere in a war, and politicians couldn't do anything to stop it, right? Even though politicians promised, saying that, as your leaders, we will save you, we will protect you, and whatsoever. But people realized that the politicians said something, but the reality was something else. Okay, from a literature perspective, how does this matter? From a literature perspective, this reflected as moving away from that 19th century writing, which was elaborate and which was using a lot of literary devices, a lot of metaphors were there, a lot of similes were there, a lot of hyperboles were there. So slowly, steadily, the authors after the war moved away from it. And then they said, well, this elaborate way of doing writing or this ornamentation of writing, this is not required. So let's move away from that and then be simplistic. So Hemingway is a champion of that. Hemingway moved away from this and created a new style. He used simple language. His characters spoke in simple sentences. The sentences are really short. If you read one of his books, you will notice this. He was basically saying more by writing less, if I can put it that way. He was basically saying more by writing less. His books are or his language is pretty simple, but that doesn't mean whatever he's saying is simple. He talked about complicated things in a very minimalistic way. So we can call his style minimalistic. We will also see this in the work that we will talk about in a few minutes. Okay, but before we talk about the way Hemingway wrote, Hemingway also contributed in a major way with one of his theories. It's called the iceberg theory. Now, what is this iceberg? I'm hoping that everybody knows what an iceberg is. For people who don't know what iceberg is, it's there on your screen. Can somebody please confirm that you can see my screen? I keep forgetting to ask this.
Yes, sir, we can see the screen.
Yes, sir, we
Okay.
can
Yes,
see.
sir, we
Okay,
can see.
thank you. So that's the iceberg. Basically, a piece of ice is on top of the water, but then a huge piece of ice is underground or under the water. I think it was Prasad who was mentioning the Titanic yesterday. So it's like that. Titanic basically hit an iceberg and then fell down. So that's iceberg. What you see on the top is just like maybe 10-15% of what is underneath. The underneath part is the biggest one. Now, why is Hemingway using this theory? we'll see what icebergs have got to do with Hemingway. He coined a term and then he called it iceberg theory. Why iceberg? Like I said, if you look at an iceberg on your screen, a very little part of it is actually visible. Okay, a big chunk of it is under the water. So what Hemingway is saying is, if a writer of prose knows enough of what he's writing about, so if he knows, he's clear about what he's writing about, he may omit the things that he knows. So basically, omit a lot of things that are not important. Just tell the things to the reader that are very important. Now, readers, basically, he's saying readers are not actually stupid. They will understand what the author is trying to say. That's basically, in simplistic terms, that is what he's saying. Now, even when the writer omits these things, the reader will have a feeling of what is omitted. The readers are smart people. So Hemingway says, well, you write something in a simple sentence, people are not stupid. They look at it and then they will understand what you mean. So just like the iceberg, for a naked eye, only a part of it is visible. But we know that that is not the whole picture. There is a big chunk hidden under the water. We know this. Okay. Now, this kind of makes sense for an iceberg. But for writing, what can be visible and what can be hidden? This makes this, whatever I said until now, makes sense for an iceberg, right? A little piece is visible on the top, a great chunk is under the water. This makes sense. From a writing perspective, can you tell me what can be visible and what can be hidden? Any ideas? Anyone?
The concept and moral is more important than other thing else, which
Okay. Jayashree says concept and morals are important than the other things. I agree with you, but that's not what we are actually thinking about, right, Jayashree? What we are thinking about is what is visible and what can be hidden. You're right, morals and whatever you said are important than, words and whatever, but that's not the question. The question is what is visible and what's not. So I'll give you a hint. So aspects like words, gestures, peripheral. Okay, yeah, somebody was going to add in with something. Go ahead.
Themes are invisible, they are implicit, and the poetic devices and the style of writing is visible. It's explicit.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that's a good answer, Yasmin. So, like you said, aspects like words, gestures, poetic devices, I think what you said, and ornamentation like metaphors, similes, and hyperboles, these are peripheral things, and these are visible because these are all described, right? It's there in the language, right? But aspects like beliefs, going back to Jayashree's comment, like beliefs, morals, values, biases, fears, feelings, these are all hidden, right? Not every author will basically say, I am very happy, I am doing this, I am doing this. It gets boring, right? After a while, the novel gets boring and it becomes huge. So there are some things that authors write, and there are some things that authors leave for the readers to understand. This is what Yasmin means by these are implicit. Okay. They're not explicitly told to the author. In Hemingway's style, he doesn't explain the hidden stuff, the one that we just talked about, values, morals, biases, and feelings, and all these things. He doesn't talk about those. He lets them be hidden. Now, as a reader, like I said, we still will understand the hidden stuff because of the way Hemingway writes. Now, what does that mean? That's the greatness of Hemingway. Because he hides or omits certain things, this iceberg theory is also called theory of omission. Okay, there is another name for this. This is called theory of omission. And just like the iceberg, the hidden part is the most strongest. If you really look at somebody's work, the words are always there. But what is the thing that hits you in the heart the most? What hits you in the mind the most? What is not being said, right? So in his work also, in Hemingway's work also, the things that he doesn't say contribute the most to the story. It's not just the words, it's the things that are beneath the surface. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, good. So now remember, Hemingway was a journalist. I asked you to remember that little bit of information about him. How does that matter? As a journalist, if you think of journalism and then how newspapers articles are written, Hemingway had to focus his newspaper report articles and everything on immediate events, like with very little context or interpretation. Your newspaper articles cannot be 15 pages long. They have to be really short, and then they can't provide too much of context, right? So this kind of sort of, when he became a writer of short stories, he retained this minimalistic style, this journalistic style of writing in a minimalistic way. So he was only focusing on the surface elements without explicitly discussing these underlying themes. And Yasmin, I think, mentioned themes. So underlying themes and all, he didn't discuss about those. He would only talk about the surface elements. So he emphasizes this idea that a writer should only reveal a small portion of the story. He shouldn't basically tell the whole story to the reader. Readers are, like I said, readers are smart. So with the bulk of the meaning and emotion implied is hinted at. Okay, it's not directly explicitly told to the reader. It's there under the surface. Now, okay, so a related thought is Hemingway's style is filled with simple sentences. We understand that. But is his style really simple? That's the question. Okay, the simplicity is sometimes deceptive in Hemingway's style because, like we saw in the iceberg theory, there's a lot hidden. So, from a reader's perspective, we need to dig out these hidden aspects, right? So, there is a lot of work that the reader has to do. In general, what the general or typical understanding of a piece of work in literature is that the author says something and the reader understands it. And the author says something in a simple way and the reader understands it in a simple way. But then coming to Hemingway, the thing is he does talk in a very simple way, but then because a lot of things are hidden underneath his surface words, it's more taxing on the reader to understand these things. So like I said, if he says if the writer knows perfectly what she is writing about, then the reader can easily understand not only what is being said, but also what is not being said. Now, if you remember from yesterday's class, Poe also said something similar, right? He said words are all okay, but to find the meaning of the written text, you should go one level beneath the words, one level beneath the surface, is what Poe said yesterday, right? Or when we were talking about Poe, we talked about it. So Hemingway is agreeing with Poe here. Hemingway also says, you just have the peripheral things on the top, but then to actually understand the meaning of a piece of work, of a piece of literature, you'll have to go one level beneath the words, one level beneath the surface. Okay. Does this make sense to everybody? Iceberg theory might be a short question in it, and it's an important thing. So let me know if you didn't understand what iceberg theory is. I can very quickly summarize this again, but if you don't have any questions, then we'll move on.
Summarize again, please.
Okay, I'll summarize it. Who is this? Who wanted the summary? I'm sorry.
Srinivas.
Srinivas. Okay. Srinivas, the thing is, if you
Sir,
look at,
actually,
yeah.
1 second, sir.
Hmm.
So we want actually what is the Hemingberg, what he's actually wanted to convey. What is the moral he wants to convey, and what we want to learn from him. That's what is the unit about that? We just want to know. Please make sure to clarify the whatever he wants to, whatever he puts in the unit. That's what.
Yeah, we haven't completed the unit yet, Jayashree. I mean, you'll have to wait for that piece of information. We have not
Yeah,
completed the unit yet.
we're going to summarize, right? So please convey what the Hemingway's intention is about. That's what.
Okay, no, I'm not summarizing the unit, by the way. Okay, anyway, iceberg theory, Srinivas, the thing is, when you look at the iceberg picture on your screen, there is a part that is visible and there is a part that is not visible, right? There's something underneath the water, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what Hemingway is saying is, if you look at this analogy and then put it on the literature side, then the words, the gestures, the ornamentation, like metaphors, similes, and all those things are the visible part of the iceberg. Okay. But there is something that is beneath that surface. What are these things? The beneath that surface, whatever is there is the belief system, the ideology, the feelings, the fears and whatever of the characters. These are underneath the surface, which he will not describe. He will only describe the peripheral things. Okay. Okay. Now it is up to the reader to look at the stuff that is visible and then understand the stuff that is not visible. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And if you were in the previous class, I was saying that Edgar Allan Poe was also saying the exact same thing. He said words are there on the book or a paper or whatever, but to find the meaning of a written text, then you should go one level beneath the words. The meaning is not in the words. You will have to actually think about those words and then you will understand what the meaning is. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions on the iceberg theory?
Clear, sir.
Okay, Sujata says our small is visible on upper side. There's much more hidden inside. That means underneath. Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to one of Hemingway's works. And the work is titled The Sun Also Rises. This is a very famous book, and it was published in 1926. Now, this is a big book, and it is divided into three parts. On the surface, it is a love story between this guy called Jake Barnes. That's the protagonist of the story. And this guy goes to a war. He served in the World War, and then he gets hurt and is an impotent. He becomes impotent because of the hurt that he had in the war, or because of the trauma and everything. And then this lady called Lady Brett Ashley. So on the surface, this is a love story between Jake Barnes and then Lady Brett Ashley. Now, but it's much more than that. Like I said, it's on the surface, this is the story, but there's much more underneath. Now, we'll try to see what is underneath. Now, Jake has not only seen the horrors of the war, but also the after effects of it. It's not just because he survived the war, he didn't die in the war. He has also seen the after effects of what war will do to him. Okay, Brett, this lady has, numerous love affairs and is a very independent woman. And this is a general reflection of the society in the 1920s America. But Brett keeps having affairs. She has an affair with Jake's friend. His name is Robert Cohn. I think he's listed on your screen. Yeah, third character on your screen. And then she also seduces a young bullfighter called Romero. He's the last character on your screen. So it's about 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, these five characters. But anyway, Brett is this, really promiscuous lady. Jake Barnes is the war guy. He went into the war and then he got hurt both emotionally as well as physically. And then he comes back. Now, all through this story, Brett and Jake are in love with each other, but both of them know that they have no chance at a stable relationship. So they know that they love each other, but they also know that nothing can happen. Now, the story is filled with bullfighting because of Romero. There's a lot of bullfighting, fishing, drinking alcohol. There's jealousy between men for Brett's attention because Brett is a beautiful lady. And then Jake, Robert, Romero, all of them want Brett. And so there's jealousy between these three men. And then when you come to the book 3, which is the last part of the story, it is about the aftermath of a fiesta. Fiesta is a celebration, like a festival that Spanish-speaking countries have. It's a festival. They call it fiesta. So it's about the aftermath of a fiesta. All these people go to the fiesta, and then it's about what happens after that. Now, after that, Jake goes to San Sebastian on the northern coast of Spain. It's a place in northern coast of Spain. So then he receives a telegram from Brett, the lady, asking for help. All she says is, "I need help." So when she does, what she does is she stays in Spain with the bullfighter Romero, but then she also leaves him also and sends a telegram to Jake. Okay, so as you can see, Brett is never able to, in this novel, she's never able to have a stable relationship. She has one person and then leaves him for another person. The novel ends with Jake and Brett in a taxi speaking of the things that might have been. Okay, this is a very famous phrase. The novel ends with things that might have been. What are these things? The things that might have been basically means what could have happened if Jake and Brett got married. So they're imagining, basically saying, oh, in case we get married, it would have been so good or so bad or whatever. The things could have been in a different way. That's what Hemingway is saying. Okay, one of the major themes is about lost generation. I am not sure if you know what lost generation is. Do you know what lost generation is? It's a literary term. Anybody? Who or what is lost generation?
We don't know anything about them.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's totally fine. Okay, lost generation were these people who were in like early adulthood during the World War One. World War One, if you know, is from 1914 to 1918, those 4 years. Now, this World War One left a permanent impact on these people. As you can see, that was one of the major wars in the 20th century. So that war left a permanent impact on these people, and they were completely lost. As in, like, directionless lost. Not lost like, they got lost somewhere. They got lost in the mind. They were directionless. They didn't know what to do. So this generation is called lost generation. Does that make sense? Now you understand what lost generation is? Okay, this is how most of the war survivors were actually. They were directionless, they were lost. So lost generation is one of the themes in this particular novel. Jake experiences war, then also experiences the after effects of the war. So it's pretty obvious that he was lost. He was directionless after the war. A related theme is alienation. If you remember, alienation is a theme that we've been talking about from the past three classes. If you remember, in the first class, this is one of the major themes in American literature. So this is what I was telling you yesterday. You will have to be an expert on Unit 1 in order for you to actually understand these other units and blocks, because the first unit discusses the major themes in American literature, and that will help you in understanding the rest of the blocks. So if you have not read the unit yet, please go back to your books and then read the first unit whenever you get a chance, as soon as possible. Anyway, characters in this novel are unable to live normally. If you see, everybody has some kind of trauma. Okay, they have been through. They feel very out of place. They feel like they don't belong to the society they live in. And this is what alienation is about, that we talked about in the first class. So they are all alienated. So alienation is a major theme of this novel. But when we say alienation is a theme, Hemingway doesn't stop there. So how do they come out of this? So these people are feeling alienated, but they have to do something to come out of that alienation, right? What is the remedy for this alienation of characters of this novel? One way is drinking alcohol. Okay, I'm not saying go drink alcohol. This is one of the themes, that's all. We are just discussing the novel, okay? One way is alcohol. The characters in the novel drink a lot of alcohol as a remedy for their trauma, okay, which is what we usually see in regular life also. But that's one of the ways that these people come out of their trauma and their alienation. Now, another remedy that they go through is watching sports like bullfighting and like really violent sports. So watching bullfighting with friends is a way in which these characters forget the trauma and try to remedy their experience. Okay? And like yesterday we talked about, love is another theme. Not only the love between Jake and Brett. I said on the surface, it's a love story between Jake and Brett. But it's not just that love we are talking about, but also love between Brett and there's another character, small character called Mike, who is the fiance of Brett. And then love between Romero and Brett. And like I said, because Brett is a little promiscuous, I mean, she has a lot of lovers. So there's all this love that is a major theme. All these characters have different kinds of feelings for Brett, and love comes out as a theme that way. Okay. Now, any other theme that you can think of, knowing the summary of the story, is there anything else that you can think of?
Actually, sir, one madam just mute that video.
Okay. Which madam is this?
Radhika, some madam is
Okay.
there.
Radhika, can you please mute your video? I'm not sure. I'm not on the screen where I can see you people, but
Radhika Bellaboy. They bought they bought a video. They're sleeping on the bed like that.
okay. Hold on for 1 second. Let me see if I can. Yeah.
Imaginary. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Prasad. I think she
Yeah, some
has.
people are there using videos. That's what sometimes the figures are coming.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out.
So whole idea of Ernest Hemingway, what type of literature you want to present, sir?
He wants to present a literature where, in his minimalistic style, he just wants to write simple sentences, but on complicated matters. Okay, so minimalistic style basically means he always writes in a very simple way, but his concepts are not very simple. That is what he talks about in the iceberg theory, right? His on the surface, the words are very simple. The sentences are very simple. He doesn't use many compound sentences and complex sentences. He only uses simple sentences, but the concept underneath is not that simple. Like we have just seen the sun also rises, right? In this, we will discuss, Prasad. If you look at it, the whole writing is very simple, but what he's talking about is not that simple.
Yeah, universal discussions. Like
yes, yeah.
Talks.
Okay, I see Anjama. Ma'am, do you have a question? You have raised your hand. So if you have a question, go ahead. If not, I'm going to lower your hand. Okay, I'm just going to lower the hand, and if you have a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself and then talk. Okay.
And the videos are coming out to the laptop and desktop side, but not our. That's what some people are using that
Okay.
videos.
Yeah.
They do not mute the video.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Any themes that you can think? Yeah. Yes, Amira.
Sorry to
No,
disturb.
go on.
So jealousy and also morally lost, like could they be themes of this? Like
Yes,
be minor
absolutely.
themes?
Absolutely. Jealousy can be a minor thing, but morally lost is a major theme.
Because they're addicted to alcohol.
Not just addicted to alcohol, like Swati was saying in the chat, there's also drug addiction. Then there is, promiscuity, and all these are quote unquote morally not valid, right? Or morally not prescribed. So morally being lost can be a major theme, just like the lost generation. And Samira, if you look at it, we are not talking about whether this is good or bad, right? We are just saying these are the themes. That's all. So we are not judging these characters saying, Brett is very bad girl. We are not saying that. We are only talking about the themes, right? So yes, I agree with you totally.
Okay.
Getting lost morally is a major theme, and jealousy is a minor theme because jealousy only comes across in one place, which is, these all three guys, or actually four guys, are jealous of each other because, Brett kind of gives attention to one guy and then ignores the other guy at a certain point in time and they get jealous. So that can be an underlying theme, but like you said, it's a minor theme. Okay. Okay. Srinivas says underneath complex depth meaning. Okay. Srinivas, can you very quickly explain what this is?
Outside it looks simple, but underneath, when we think of the meaning, it has some depth.
A deep meaning, right? Yes, that's it. So Prasad, that's exactly what Hemingway is trying to convey. Outside, it's very simple, but underneath it has a depth of meaning. Okay. Adiba says hope and renewal. Hope and renewal. This is a good observation. Why is hope a theme of this? Adiba, can you very quickly explain why hope is a theme? Okay, she says there is hope that they will come out of that war situation. Huh. Okay. So I will add a little bit to what you just said. Yes, they have a hope of coming out of the war situation. But if you remember the way the novel ends, it says they are thinking of things that could have been, right? What is things that could have been is a hope again, because they know their current situation is not very good. They are both Jake and Brett, both are sitting in the taxi and then thinking of what could have been. And what could have been is something better. Okay. Okay. Hafsa says sorrow. That's good. Okay. Now let's talk for a minute on the title of this. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Any further questions, or can I move on? Okay, good. So let's talk for a minute on the title of this book.
Just to explain, sir, what is fiction?
What is what?
Fiction, sir, fiction.
Fiction is any piece of work that is not reality, or it's not describing real elements, but it is fictional, which is imagination. Fiction loosely translates into imagination. Okay, so you're imagining stuff. So in case of Hemingway, who we are talking about, Hemingway is not saying that Jake and Brett and Romero and Robert and everybody are real characters. He's not saying they have been in my life or in their life or somebody else's life. He is imagining these characters, right? So when a writer imagines stuff and then writes, that's fiction. It doesn't reflect reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what is the other part? The other part is non-fiction, which talks about real things. So If we are talking about World War One, and there's a book on World War One which talks about, the experiences of people in World War One. That is non-fiction. Why? Because nobody's imagining it. Of course, World War One happened, and then the experiences are real, right? So that's non-fiction.
What is this ritual means ritual, tradition.
Ritual means tradition, yes.
William
Okay.
Faulkner, you want to say?
I'm sorry, say that again.
You want to go for William Faulkner?
Yeah. No. But before going to Faulkner, I want to talk a little bit about the title of the book. So what do you think sun also rises means? Nowhere in the story, Hemingway has nothing to do with the sun, right? So why sun also rises? What has sun got to do with this? On the surface, the title has nothing to do with the story. But if you go one level beneath it, this title is a biblical reference to Ecclesiastes, where there's a King Solomon says the sun rises, the sun goes down to his place when he arose from. That's a quotation from the Bible. Okay, so this particular title reflects that biblical reference. But what has this got to do with the story? Again, even if it is from, King Solomon's story, well, okay, the sun goes up, the sun goes down. That happens every day. But what has that got to do with the story? That should be your next question. And the answer is, when you think of it, the human condition is filled with ups and downs. We are happy sometimes, we are sad at other times. We have things to celebrate, we have things to feel sad about. We live in this never-ending cycle, just like how sun goes down, comes up again and again and again. So we are living in this cycle. So one way of looking at it is that while the characters of this novel have despair and feel alienated, and they think they don't belong to the society and all that, they still have hope, just like the rising sun. Right? Somebody just mentioned, hope as one of the themes. So it kind of aligns to that. Okay, Swati says that means there is hope of hope.
Sorrow comes and sorrow will go.
Yes, sorrow comes, sorrow goes, happiness comes, happiness goes. Yes.
Yeah, and every time the life starts with sun.
Yes. Yeah. And Prasad, just to add to what we were talking about, fiction and non-fiction, Rajni says examples of non-fiction are diaries and biographies. Okay. So diaries are things where we write our experiences, and biographies are.
One question, sir.
Yeah.
Here the theme, the sun also rises. In what way he used to describe the sun also rises? In what way, actually? In the human thought, how the sun also rises. You said that in a little bit hope is there. So
Right.
in what way?
Yeah. So like I was saying, in the human condition, if you look at we as humans, there are ups and downs, right? Every day we can't be happy. At the same time, every day we can't be sad, right? So sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are sad, right? So basically, one way of looking at the title is we live in this never-ending cycle, just like how sun goes down, comes up, goes down, comes up again. So there is up and down every single day of our life. So that's one way of looking at it. So when aligning this, or kind of looking at it from the novel's perspective, if you look at the last sentence in the novel, it says, Jake and Brett are thinking of the things that could have been, right? So what are these that could have been? The things that could have been are good things. Why? Because right now what they are experiencing is a sad thing. So there's always a little bit of hope at the end. Does that make sense, Jayashree? Jayashree, you still there on the class, or have you disconnected? Okay, while Jayashree tries to talk or join in again, Swati says people lost the generation, moral sense. The title says there is scope for enlightenment, same as day and night. Yes, that's true. Day and night is basically sun being up and sun being down. That's a good way of putting it. Adiba says importance of time because it was wartime. If it was not war, they would be in a different situation and they would be together. Jacob, excellent. Yes, exactly. If it was not the war, they would have been together, and that's the hope. Okay. Now, before going to Faulkner, let's go back to Hemingway's style.
So,
Okay,
sir,
uh,
I got
yes,
you,
Josh.
sir. You said that a little bit hope is there. So what is the hope they are trying for? I'm asking about that. That's what.
Exactly. Like, wait, who was this? Swati was just saying. There is, or no, Adiba was just saying. She says importance of time because it was wartime, and if it was not war, then they would be in a different situation. And this different situation is them being together, being married, and then being with each other, not Brett going around with other men. So that's the hope from Jake's side, right? And from Brett's side, she had a relationship with Romero, but that ended in a horrible way, and then she had to go back to Jake, right?
Okay.
So basically, when they say things could have been, these things could have been better, is what they are saying. That's the hope they are looking at. They are looking at each of them being with each other.
Yeah. Okay. Okay,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Sujata says each new day brings the promise of a fresh start. Yeah, that's good. So basically, so again, Jayashree, continuing that discussion, right? When you link it to the title of the story, just like the sun goes up and sun goes down every day, there's hope as well as despair in life. That's basically one way of looking at it. All right.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to Hemingway's style now. We talked about his style being minimalistic. This novel is classic Hemingway. It is written in simple sentences. No extra information is given. He does not give even a single extra information that is not required. Only the most required information is given, and the reader is left to understand the rest. Okay, this is in line with our iceberg theory that we talked about a few slides ago. Now, for example, Hemingway doesn't say, when he's describing Brett, this lady, he doesn't say explicitly that Brett is beautiful. He can also say that Brett is so beautiful that, she looks like a rose, she looks like a lotus, she looks like this, she looks like that. He doesn't do that. He just says that people turn their heads wherever Brett walks by. That's the sentence that he uses. He just says people turn their heads wherever Brett walks by. Now, by doing this as a reader, we understand that Brett is beautiful, even though the author hasn't explicitly mentioned it. He's not mentioning that she is beautiful, but we will still understand because, I mean, why else would everybody turn their head when Brett is walking by? Okay, so that's Hemingway's style of writing. Another thing in Hemingway is that he avoids abstract or complicated words. He doesn't use any complicated words. Another striking feature is that he just stacks one sentence after another. There is no commentary. There is no, extra information or anything. No explanation of what he just said. Just one sentence after another sentence. That's it. Every sentence makes or contributes to the story. It's all just a series of short sentences. Okay. There is a technical term for this. It's called parataxis. If I don't know if you know what parataxis is, but parataxis basically is putting short sentences side by side. Have you ever heard of this phrase, I came, I saw, I conquered? There are no extra words in this. It says, I came, I saw, I conquered. That's it. Where did he come from? What did he see? What did he conquer? Nothing, no extra information. So that's parataxis. But anyway, simplicity is the key to Hemingway. That's what is the lesson, basically. Okay, can we move on to Faulkner, or does anybody have any questions on Hemingway, his writing style, or the novel that we just talked about?
No, sir.
Okay, 1 second. Let me very quickly do something and then I'll be back.
Then I have a doubt, sir. In American,
Prasad, 1 second. Just hold on for 1 second. I just have to do something on the screen. I will be back. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, Prasad, you wanted to say something.
Actually, in US, there are so many American literature books are available now. Yeah, in in America, అమెరికాలో చాలా బుక్స్ ఉంటాయి కదా.
Right, right.
Can the people read under the reading? They will follow the readings of this literature. I just have a doubt.
They
Because
will follow. Okay, say that again. You can talk in Telugu. I can understand
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So,
అంటే వాళ్ళ బుక్స్ చాలా ఉన్నాయి కదా, సో మెనీ
right,
బుక్స్.
right,
కొన్ని లెవెల్స్ రాసినప్పుడు వాళ్ళ కల్చర్ లో చాలా చేంజ్ వస్తుంది కదా.
right,
వాళ్ళ
right.
వైలెన్స్ ఉంటుంది వాళ్ళ దగ్గర, సో మచ్ డిఫరెంట్ కల్చర్. మళ్ళీ ఈ లిటరేచర్ లో చాలా మంచి మీనింగ్ఫుల్ గా లిటరేచర్ ఉంటున్నాయి కదా కొన్ని. బట్ వై
Right.
దే ఆర్ నాట్ ఫాలోయింగ్, why they are not following, that's
Okay, so I will highlight one thing here. You are right that literature is a reflection of the society. That's what you're saying, right? Whatever
yeah,
happens
yes,
in literature should
yes.
happen in society, and vice versa also. But you will also have to remember that as readers, we have to understand that these are fictional stories, right? There might be a Jake in real life. I'm not saying there will not be a Jake in real life. There might be a Brett in real life. I'm not saying there will not be a Brett, but we have to understand that these people are writing fiction, right? These people are imagining stuff and then writing. Now, having said that, not everything people will take. You don't even have to go to US, okay? Uh, you can even come back home and then talk about India. India also has a lot of literature, right? I'm not talking about religious literature. In general, Telugu, if you're a Telugu speaker, there are very big novels and very big good dramas and very big short stories. I'm sorry, very famous short stories. Everything in Telugu also, right? So the same question, don't you think, can be posed for our Telugu audience also? Saying,
Yeah,
why
how
are
do
we
you
not following?
Right.
There are beautiful works written in Telugu, but why aren't Telugu people following what these or the morals of all these stories, right? That is because literature, even though it reflects society, it doesn't reflect it completely. Okay, what happens in literature cannot happen always in reality because we have this, subjectivity. We have a subjective position in the society, and then we do things based on our subjective position. So we cannot do everything that is there in the literature, right? Because that is why you keep, when you think something is wrong, and then when you go and tell somebody, hey, what you did is wrong, they will say, no, no, in my position, it is right. So literature doesn't make a lot of sense there because reality is something else, right? But you're right. I mean, some literature will have tremendous impact on people. But America is a big country, right? Just like India, America is also a very big country. So it cannot have the same impact on everybody. Like like in India, if we talk about Indians, Prasad might have some impact reading, I don't know, I mean, Kolkaluru Enoch, or even when you go back, you can read some dramas or some novels that have been written in the contemporary times, and Prasad might get impacted by it. But if you come and talk to Ashwin, Ashwin might not get impacted in the similar way, right? So we cannot, while I agree with you that literature has an impact on the society and vice versa, it cannot have the same impact on it. Okay?
Okay, sir. Sure. I wrote when it is, sir. We published in 1932 recently.
29.
Yeah.
Which one? The Sun Also Rises?
Will Faulkner.
Faulkner. No, we didn't come to Faulkner yet. We are still with Hemingway. We are still with his simplistic writing. We'll come to Faulkner. Okay. Sun Also Rises was written by Hemingway and it was published in 1926, in the past century.
Oh.
Okay. We've come to the 20th century fiction in America. Okay. Okay, moving on very quickly. We will talk about Faulkner. Faulkner, again, was born in 1897, and he was an American novelist and a short story writer. He also won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1949. Okay, both Hemingway and Faulkner, both of them won Nobel Prizes. Now, Faulkner's work is rooted in his Southern background. Okay, you will have to know about the American War, Civil War, or the Revolution to know what the Southern background is. The South states typically are the ones which um, said it was okay to have slaves, and northern states are the ones which said no, slavery is wrong. Okay, just remember that background. Okay, Faulkner was from the southern state. He was born in Mississippi, which is one of the southern states in the US. His idea of slavery in the South was that while it is bad, desegregation, which is basically stopping racial segregation, should not be forced and should be let to go slow. Basically, he said, let the blacks be on one side, let the whites be on one side. You should not desegregate them as fast as it is happening. Okay, that's what Faulkner's views were. As you can see, this view is controversial, of course, and Faulkner got a lot of criticism for this. Why? Because everybody else was saying, no, there has to be desegregation. You cannot treat blacks differently from whites. Everybody has to live together. Everybody needs to get treated in the same way. Okay. But Faulkner was the one who openly said, well, while I know that it's going to be bad, the slavery is going to be bad, it's not, desegregation shouldn't be done as fast as it is happening. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind. Anyway, Faulkner is different from Hemingway in one very big way. Okay, Hemingway, as we saw, was very minimalistic, meaning he used simple sentences and did not provide elaborate commentary and all. Faulkner, on the other hand, used stream of consciousness technique. Anybody knows what stream of consciousness technique is? You must, if you are in the 20th century in the British literature class, you should already know what stream of consciousness is. Anybody? What is stream of consciousness?
It's like a consciousness or
Stream of consciousness is a literary technique. Okay, it is a literary technique that authors use. Yeah, Yasmin, you were saying something.
Yes, while the writer is writing something, she moves to her past experiences and writing those things, those experiences.
Not the past. You're right. You're semi-right. Okay. It's not always about the past. What is stream of consciousness? It is used to describe, it's a literary technique used to depict various thoughts and feelings which pass through the mind of a narrator as they are writing. Like, let's say I sit at my table and then I start writing. Okay. And then whatever thoughts come into my mind, I write. I don't think about what those thoughts are. I just write them. That's it. Like, if I'm thinking about, let's say Faulkner and then how bad his opinions were about desegregation and all, I will start writing about that. And in the middle, if I think about breakfast, then I will write about breakfast. And then if I think about, why is the fan making such big sound? I will write about the fan making such big sound. Okay. It's like that. Whatever thoughts come to your mind of the narrator, these thoughts will be written. Okay, these thoughts might not be related, like I said. Like, for example, you might be thinking about Faulkner right now. And then you might think of how you can enjoy a Sunday evening after the class. And then how like tomorrow morning you have to wake up early in the morning, or about your family, or when you can watch the latest movie. All these things are distinct things, right? These are not related things, but they're coming and going out of your mind. They are related thoughts, just flow as a stream, right? They just flow. Our thought process just flows as a stream. So stream of consciousness is basically writing about this thought process. Does that make sense? You will learn a lot more about this when you discuss James Joyce or Virginia Woolf in British literature course. Okay. So you will, whoever your counselor is, they will talk about Virginia Woolf or James Joyce in British literature. They will talk about stream of consciousness because both these authors were champions of this particular style. But for now, remember that Faulkner used this technique in his words. Hemingway used simple sentences. Faulkner used stream of consciousness. Okay, Asad says flow of thoughts. Yes, that's good. Swati says yes, inner thoughts of mind. Yes. Shweta says without any planning, they are going to write something on flow. Yes, all three definitions are good. All right, now we will move on to one of Faulkner's works. It's called Light in August. It was published in 1932, so just a few years later than what Hemingway published in 1926. Okay. This is a novel. Again, I'll give you a very quick summary of the story. This is a novel set in the interwar period. So between World War I and World War II. Okay, the story revolves around a pregnant white woman and a man. These are the main characters. He uses flashbacks, and using flashbacks, the story reveals how these two people got connected, how their lives are impacted, and their story, basically. So Faulkner goes back and forth in his novel. He uses, flashbacks and flash forwards. So this novel is set in the American South in 1930s. You will have to remember that American South basically means states which were okay with having slavery. Okay. So it begins with Lena Grove. That's the protagonist of the story, a young pregnant white woman. She's a white woman who is pregnant. And it's important that we mention that she's a white woman, because if it was a black woman, then she would have been a slave in that particular. So anyway, she is trying to find the father of her unborn child. Okay. This guy gets fired from his job, moves to another place, and says he will send a word to Lena. And then, he says, let me go, and then let me get settled, and then I will send a word to you, and then you and the child can come and stay with me. Of course, he doesn't send any word. So Lena Grove, she starts hitchhiking and going here and there, and then in search of the father of her child. She goes to Mississippi, where she thinks this guy is working. Okay, somebody says, your partner is working in Mississippi, so she runs to Mississippi to find him. She finds this guy, but then this guy has changed his name. And in a series of events, another guy called Byron Bunch falls in love with Lena, but he doesn't express as he feels that it is his responsibility to make Lena find the father of her unborn child. So he basically helps Lena find the father of the unborn child. Now, this guy who impregnated Lena changed his name to Joe Brown. So there's Joe Brown, who is the guy who left Lena. Then there's Lena. And then there is this guy who falls in love with her, whose name is Byron Bunch. Okay. These are our main characters. Then the novel shifts to another scene, the story of Joe Brown's partner. Okay, his partner's name is Joe Christmas. This guy is a psychopath. He is a known criminal. He has a big criminal history. He works in a mill. And this guy's job is in the mill is just a cover, actually. He is secretly making and selling alcohol, which is prohibited at that time. In the 1930s, the alcohol was prohibited. But because it's illegal, the cover is basically working in the mill, but then secretly he makes alcohol and sells it. Now he has a relationship with another character, Joanna Burden, who is an older woman. And things happen after some incidents. She gets murdered. Okay, this older woman gets murdered. Now, the novel doesn't say that Joe Christmas or Joe Brown is the murderer. It doesn't tell you who the murderer is. Excuse me. Joe Brown is seen leaving Joanna's burning house. Okay, that is described in the novel. And the police first suspect Joe Brown, but then start searching Joe Christmas. Why? Because Brown says that Christmas is black. Okay, he says, no, Christmas is black, so he must have killed. Okay, that's that stereotype that he builds. Now, eventually, Christmas is arrested and jailed, and then, he escapes from the jail, and then, police follow him, and then he gets killed. So our Joe Christmas guy is killed. In the meantime, what happens is, in a separate incident, Lena delivers the baby, but Joe Brown leaves her again and runs away. Now, this fellow is a really bad guy. Once he left her after impregnating her, and then once he will also run away after the baby is born. At the end of the story, an anonymous man is talking to his wife about two strangers. Okay, he's telling his wife, anonymous man, we don't know his name. He's talking to his wife about two strangers he picked up on a trip to Tennessee. And these strangers are Lena and Byron, okay, who are still searching for Brown. Okay, Lena is the girl who had the baby. Byron is the guy who is helping Lena. And Brown is the guy who ran away. So Lena and Byron, the good friends, are still searching for Brown. That's the end of the story. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, the novel is very violent, right? Prasad, I think, was just mentioning there is a lot of violence in these things. Yes, there's a lot of violence in this particular novel. There is murder, there are other crimes, there is, burning of the home and all these things. Now, the structure of the novel goes between the present and flashbacks, like I said, and shifts from one character to another. So it's a little bit confusing unless you read it in a very concentrated manner. Having said this, now the title of the novel is Light in August. Again, just like the sun also rises. What has this got to do with the story? The story has nothing to do with August. The story has nothing to do with light. So if anything, this is actually a dark novel, right? So It has, murders and, people leaving people and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a dark novel. Why is the title Light in August? What does the title signify? Now, the title can be interpreted in at least 2, 3 different ways. We will talk about 2 ways, and then, I will leave it to you to think of another way or other ways. Okay. One way is to look at the word light as in making it light, right? If like something is heavy and you're making it light by removing some weight, right? Now, in this interpretation, what happens is, can Lena Grove, who is pregnant at the starting of the story, becomes light by the end of the story because she delivers the baby. And all this happens in August, so light in August. But that is one interpretation. I'm not saying that's the right interpretation or the wrong interpretation. I'm saying that is one interpretation. And this is the thing that I keep repeating in multiple times, that there is no right or wrong interpretation when it comes to literature. Okay? As long as it's not a very crazy interpretation, everything is right. Okay. Another interpretation is that this light refers to actual light of fire. If you remember Joanna Burden's house, that old lady's house is set on fire, and that is the center of the story. So this happens in August, so light in August. So it can be another interpretation. Now, another interpretation can be light is not fire or light or anything, but it can be enlightenment. Okay. At least one of the characters realizes that, his past deeds are wrong and has an enlightenment phase. So it can be interpreted in this way also. Now, all these are different interpretations. Okay. Can anybody tell me one more interpretation? What can it be? Light in August, apart from Shweta says child is born in August, so light means a child. Excellent. Yes. Yeah, that's one interpretation.
Maybe August.
Prasad, your voice is echoing.
Maybe August is the season, no?
August is the month.
So maybe
okay.
the season gives happiness.
Okay. You're saying, okay. The August is a season of happy or a month of happiness, and that's why it's light in August. Okay. Yeah. That can be one interpretation. But let's go. I mean, there was an interview with Faulkner, and then somebody asked Faulkner, what on earth does it mean, light in August? So let's see what he said. He said in that interview, where he lived in Mississippi in the month of August, there are a couple of days where the day is brighter than other days. So August has 31 days, and then in those 31 days, 29 days have, regular brightness, but 2 days are very bright. There is more light. He says the story somehow reminded him of those days. So that's why the title is Light in August. So if you see, all our interpretations don't match with what Faulkner actually thought, right? So that is the beauty of literature, where like I said, there's no right interpretation or the wrong interpretation. There are just multiple interpretations. That's all. We're not judgmental in saying this is right, this is wrong. It is just our interpretation of it. Why? Because the interpretation of Shweta, the interpretation of Prasad, all these are excellent interpretations. There's nothing wrong with thinking that way. Okay. Okay, let's very quickly look at the themes of the novel. One, again, very, very prominently is alienation. Again, this alienation keeps coming back in every work that we talk about. Most of the characters in the novel are social misfits in one way or the other. Okay, so they experience alienation. Byron Bunch, our guy, nice guy, who was helping Lena, he's viewed as a mystery, or simply, his character is overlooked. Joe Christmas and Lena Grove are the strangers in town because they came from someplace else. Both are social misfits because Joe Christmas is very violent and picks up fights with everybody. Lena is looked down upon. So most characters experience alienation in one way or the other. And the second one, I think somebody asked in the first class, how does religion impact literature? And I wish that person was in the class. I'm not sure if he is, then this is how it impacts. There's a lot of Christian symbolism in this novel. This is very evident with the name Joe Christmas, right? The name itself has Christmas. But we can see many instances of Christian allegories and symbolisms from the Bible also in this particular novel. Then there is a theme of good and evil. Joe Christmas stands for evil here. And Lena is portrayed as good in the novel because, she's that lady who has been duped by a bad guy and then who ran away after, making her pregnant. And also Byron, our nice guy, is the link between this good and evil. Lena is the good, and Joe Christmas is the evil, and then Byron is the guy who stands in between. Okay. So think of other themes also. If anybody wants to very quickly tell me another theme, then we will listen to that. What is another theme that you can think of? Anybody? Anything else? Any other theme that you can think of? Listening to the story in a very summarized manner.
Well, answer. Please explain one story.
I'm sorry, Prasad. Your voice is
Sure, sir.
echoing.
Sir, in my
So I want to explain stories, sir.
Oh, can I do that sometime in the next class? Or, I can send you a message or something offline, because if I have to explain the story, then it will probably take at least 10 minutes more. So we'll do that, but okay, identity is the theme. Yes. Yeah, that's good. Okay, because we don't have that much time, let's move on, if that's okay with you. Okay, we will talk about something else and then we'll come back to Light in August. Please remember this. Whenever we have time in the next classes, we will come back to Light in August. Okay, if that's okay with everybody, I would want to move ahead. Is that okay, Prasad? Yes, yeah, you need to actually look at the story and then, if you have time today, just go through your course book. In that, the story is kind of given in a very concise manner. It's a good summary of the story. Okay, good. Prasad says yes, so let's just move on. Okay, answering questions from this unit. Discuss the themes of Sun Also Rises. Your course book talks about alienation as the major theme, but you can also talk about themes we discussed like lost generation and love. Okay. The reason why I keep mentioning this and then answering questions from this unit is part of the class is because you don't necessarily have to write only what is there in the book. You can also, like we always do in this, in at least in American literature class, we come up with our own themes, which are major themes, and then you can also write about those themes in your answers. You don't have to stick to whatever is there in the book. Okay, the book is just a guidance. Okay. Second one, examine light in August as a struggle between good and evil. Now, this is a subjective answer. Unless you know the story, unless you know the major characters, you cannot write this answer. Okay. So this is, again, I will repeat repeat what I said last time. Please go through these stories. These stories are interesting stories, so it's not like you will forget them. Read every single story and then remember them, and then you will be able to answer these kind of questions where, they ask look at it or examine it as a struggle between good and evil. You can easily answer these questions as long as you know the story. If you don't know the story, then it's really difficult. Okay. We've discussed the 20th century American fiction. Should we start Unit 8 or should we stop our class here today? Hold on. It's time, 1 o'clock. Till what time is the class? 1:15, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
we
sir.
still have 15 minutes. Okay, let's finish this particular slide and then we can meet again next week. Okay, now that we have discussed 20th century American fiction, let's move a little further and discuss contemporary fiction. Now, personally, I have an issue with the word contemporary because, the definition of what is contemporary depends on who you ask. But for our purpose of discussion, we will call writing that happened after World War II. So around 1945, anything that is written after 1945, we will call it contemporary fiction. Okay, please remember this because when I use the word contemporary, this is what I mean. Anything that is written in and around or after 1945 is contemporary. So one thing is obvious, which is right after the war, novels will come and these are called post-war novels. Okay, the war has brought in dislocation, both physically and mentally. Like we saw the Lost Generation right after the First World War. After the two wars, you can imagine mentally how drained people were. Now, this is the time when the concept of middle class grew in the US also. There was no middle class before. Okay, this is the time when the concept of middle class grew up. So the problems and issues of this middle class are different from, pre-war problems of businessmen and, rich people. And the problems of these people are different. So these problems have become major theme during this time. What you understand what the problems are? The problems of middle class people have become the major theme during the contemporary time. Now, along with the human loss, the war has also lost a lot of impact. It had a lot of impact psychologically on people. We just saw the case of, Jake. We just where he went to the war and then came back, and then he was mentally very disturbed. So the war also induced this aggression. People became more aggressive, trying to control one's life, desire for power, because, like I said, people lost all their faith in the government, and then they thought nobody can save them except for themselves. So they became more aggressive. They became, they wanted to control their own life. And then one of the ways of doing that is, desiring for power and becoming powerful. So not everyone can realize these desires in the right way. So they searched for other avenues. Okay, so not everybody can, do the right things, but people went in weird ways. Drug addiction is one such way, which kind of helped them escape the realities of the time at that time. The reason why I'm mentioning drug addiction is because we are going to talk about something called beat generation. William Burroughs kind of comes to mind here. In his writings, he used drug addiction as a metaphor for other types of addiction, like addiction to control, addiction to power, addiction to being cruel. William Burroughs was part of a group called Beat Generation. Beat Generation is a bunch of writers who published in the 1950s and explored this culture of America, the changing culture of America and the changing politics of America. These were called the Beat Generation. They were non-conformists in different ways, not in one way. They were non-conformists. They experimented with drugs. They made spiritual quests. They believed in Eastern religions. They experimented with those. So very, very famous authors like Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, Jack Kerouac, Lucien Carr. These five people are quintessentially Beat Generation writers. Okay, if you have a chance, please read at least one works of these writers, because they talk about how when you're high with drugs, you go into a spiritual realm and that kind of stuff. Okay, let's not dwell on beat generation more. Mid 20th century and later was also the time when technological advancements happened. Now we are talking about 1950s and afterwards. So technology advanced in a rapid pace. Now, of course, this had to be a theme in the literature, because, like Prasad just said, whatever happens in society, which should also come into literature and vice versa. So a typical example of this is like Thomas Pynchon's V, the whole novel. The title is V, the letter V. That's it. This was published in early 60s, I think. And there's another one which is called Gravity's Rainbow. And this novel is set in Europe at the end of World War II, and it revolves around the production of rockets by the German military. And it talks about, it's called Black Device, which has to be installed in a rocket. And it's all about technology. And, you can see how technology is one of the main themes here. Contemporary fiction, American fiction, also touches on these themes like identity, American history, technology. And we have a lot of African American authors writing during this time. Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man comes to my mind, but there are others like James Baldwin and other people. And women authors also, like Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, they also wrote in the second half of 20th century. Somebody asked in the first class or the second class why women writers are not given that much importance. Because women writers, like in British literature, you must have already noticed, women had or women writers were not encouraged at all. So they had to sometimes use pseudonyms, and then they had to use male names to get their work published. But that kind of changed in the middle of the 20th century. So people like, or authors like Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, they came out and then with their original names, they are published. We'll talk about some women authors in a separate unit later. I think it's in the last block. We will talk about women authors. Anyway, I'm sure your course book lists some other authors from this time period, so please take time to read this unit. But one thing the book doesn't do is talk about year 2000 authors. Okay, it doesn't talk about year 2000 authors, because I think the book was written about 10 years back or something like that. But anyway, you should also, maybe you can go to Wikipedia and then search for contemporary American fiction. And I'm sure, people like Michael Chabon or Louis Eldridge will come up. So those are also some of the authors that you might want to list when you're writing about contemporary American fiction. So like I said, you don't have to stick with what the book is talking about. You can also add certain things that the book is not talking about. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about Louis Aldrich when we discuss poetry in the next week. Okay. Like we always do in the American literature class, just before leaving you, I will ask a few questions. This is again not to test you or anything. This is so that we are all on the same page. Okay. Who wrote The Sun Also Rises? These are simple questions. Anybody? Who is the author of The Sun Also Rises?
Hemingway.
Okay, Hemingway.
Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah. Name one contemporary American author. Anybody?
Penrich.
Okay, Eldridge. Yes, Louise Eldridge is a. We'll
Robert
talk about her.
Stone.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Robert Stone.
Robert Stone. Okay, that's an interesting. Okay, yeah. And what is your interpretation of title Light in August? I will leave this to yourself. You don't have to answer this now, but whenever you have time, just think about what is Light in August. I've told you what Faulkner meant by Light in August. I've also given three interpretations. Shweta and Prasad have given their interpretations. So just think about it and then, come up with your interpretation on Light in August. If you want to discuss this novel again, like I said, we will discuss it in a further class where we have, if we have time. Okay. Okay, let us take a pause here for today and then continue next week. In the next class, what we'll do is we will move on to American poetry. We will start with characteristics of American poetry, what American poetry is. Somebody is not muted. Shweta, can you mute yourself, please?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, what does mean by parasitism, sir?
Sorry, say that again.
What does mean by parasitism?
I'm not able to hear you properly. What does it mean by what?
Parasitism, sir.
I still can't. Can you send me the chat?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you send? Let me know when you send it to me in the chat. Okay.
Is it depending on others? Parasitism.
Oh, parasitism. Okay. Yeah, it must be depending on others. Being a parasite must be.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, especially when, you grow at the expense of others. Okay. It's not just depending on others. Like, we as children, when we were children, we would depend on the parents, but we are not called parasites, right? That is not the parasitism that anybody is talking about. Parasitism is basically you depending on somebody else at the expense of their, life. That is parasitism.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next week we'll start about we'll talk about really great poets and one poet and one poetess, Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. We will also talk about Robert Frost. You must have definitely heard Robert Frost if you have not heard Whitman and Dickinson. But that is next week. Okay. Okay, this is a very good question. Why has the concept of American dream changed over years? That's a very good question. MYPC, I don't know what your real name is, but somebody is asking why has the concept of American dream changed over years? Can we take this as homework and then come back next week with answers for this person? Is that okay with everybody?
Sure, sir.
The question is why is the concept of American dream changed? Why has it changed over years? Okay, that's the question. So please take this down. And then next time when we meet, before starting the class, we will talk about this. So MYPC, if you can join next Saturday's class, then we will have an answer to this. All right.
Sir, we did not have any online classes for literary criticism. So, in case we have any doubts, can we ask you? Would that be okay?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little iffy for me because I am supposed to only talk about American literature. So again, I'm so sorry. I keep referring you to Dr. Madhuri, but then she is the best person to answer this question. I didn't know that you have not been having online classes for literary criticism. That's paper 5, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I am not sure why it's happening, but you reach out to Madhuri ma'am and then tell her that literary criticism classes are not happening. She is very busy, so she might not have realized. So I would request you to highlight that to her.
Okay, sure.
And then, yeah, I will also let her know that literary criticism classes are not happening. And then we'll see what she says, all right? But if you have specific questions, Samira, yeah, we can carve out some time in the last class or something, and then we can talk about those specific questions, all right?
Sure.
Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining the class, and I'll see you all in the next class. Don't forget the homework that MYCP has given us. MYCP, if you don't mind, can you tell us your original name? What is... Okay, I'll wait for a DM. But anyway, why has the concept of American dream changed over the years? That's the question. Please research on it or think about it, and then we will talk about it in the next class.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.